Okay, welcome everyone to the playtest for Sealskin. This was organized through the Gauntlet, an online gaming community that you can find at, what was it, gauntletrpg.com? Yes, gauntlet-rpg.com. They make it easy to arrange lots of games every month, including playtests like this one. Yay! Uh, So let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Kyle, he, they. I'll be emceeing, I guess, for lack of a better term. This is normally a DM-less game, but it's also in playtesting, so I'm here just to make sure things don't go too far off the rails. In character keeper order, next we got Richard.
Yeah, I am Richard, he, him pronouns, and I'm playing the heir, Hélène, and yeah, just we'll see. I haven't found my angle on the playbook yet, but I'm sure I'll figure it out.
Great, we're welcome to discuss that in play. And I'm sorry, Leah, I completely skipped your column. I don't know why.
I'm Leah. I'm going to be playing the selkie, Orla.
And I'm Steven. I'll be playing the Scion, Eloise.
And I'm Pearl, and I'll be playing the beloved, who I have neglected to give a name to. I just discovered when going to introduce her, or him, or it.
No rush. And
I
yeah,
will do that.
Just to be clear, all the characters are related to the selkie somehow. The beloved is the most free form of the bunch. You could be just a friend or a cousin or anything else, really. So this is, I think, best can be described as a sort of, free-form LARP thing. There aren't going to be any dice rolls now that we've, picked characters and things. So basically, what we're going to go into this is with a discussion of, now that the selkie has recovered her skin, well, what to do now. Let me get to the... Right, so when we start play, the selkie will set the first scene, just describe where you are, what you're doing, and other characters can enter the scene as it feels right. Let's try to give each other a chance to speak and all that. And you can share what the captor's death means to each of you. I mean, are you free now? Is this safety? You can even mourn them a little if you want, although it would probably be best to turn that down because, there's a line against parental mourning. Although it's been more okay because this parent was an ass, to put things mildly. And so each of the roles in this game, you have your own goals, as you can see there in the goals columns. Just to make clear, if you're not the selkie, your number one goal is to respect the selkie's decision, just to avoid the absolute worst of this. Yeah. And in addition to that, you also want what you think is best for the selkie and your family. You just have different opinions on what that is exactly. And then there are a few things that are special to each role. For each role can only they can do certain things, like as you can read the text there. For example, only the heir can offer safety and conformity, that sort of thing. That's the ending you're offering mainly. And there's also a topic each of you can speak with authority about. So basically, you're all welcome to add world building details as you want, but if the player gets the final word if it seems like it falls under your topic here. So like the heir gets the final word on how the town's well-to-do are doing, that sort of thing. And everyone also gets 2 questions you can ask that always get a true answer. Did we lose someone? Or
I just turned off my video for a second.
great. Always get a true answer. You don't have to answer in words if you want. You can just describe your body language if you'd prefer. And below that, there are actions that all of you can do. If you ever want to, if there's ever a detail of the world that you're not quite sure about or the setting, just make something up or raise it to the group, ask a provocative question, however you'd like to do this. Does that make sense to everyone? Great. So first things first, I suppose we need to just get to a basic understanding of the setting. This is probably a seaside town of some kind. Be a little hard to do it in the middle of the Sahara. The sort of default assumption is it's some seaside town in the British Isle at some point ambiguously in the past, but time and place is flexible. What are people thinking?
I like low technology, if that's okay with other folks.
Say something like 18th century. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, like there's no specific time period that I want to like be worried about adhering to historical accuracy for, but I think like not cell phones and like sleepy seaside town with grizzled old fishermen sitting on barrels and things works for me in whatever time period. If people are down for that.
Yeah. And I think the selkie is traditionally a more towards the northern part of Britain, Scotland, and Orkney, places like that. So I'm just feeling like a more traditional setting. So maybe northern Scotland.
Sounds good.
I'd like to maybe have a quick check-in with Leah about what our relationship should be. As it can be.
So I'm not. I feel like once it's between 2 seals, kind of like questionable how much it maps onto like human relationships in the first place, right? So like there's kind of like an intense playmates thing, or there's what romantic means to seals, right? Like and I'm kind of flexible. I think kind of I lean towards just whatever it is, like it's not exactly analogous to human marriage, right?
Right.
And there's like some kind of contrast between this world and that. What does that sound like to you?
That sounds fine to me. I was gonna say, like, if you want to stay away from the romance side entirely, we could also do, like best friends from childhood, or we don't need to lean into the actual romance part to have like emotional intimacy that is meaningful. So
yeah, I feel like there's no question, like it's a strong love, and to me that's kind of, for seals, like I imagine has like a certain degree of like playfulness to it, right? And like what exactly that would look like lived out, I'm flexible to play to find out a little.
okay, sounds good to me. Why are you so like in the dark?
Great. Oh, and I realized there's one thing I didn't make clear on the character keeper. In the look section, you don't have to go with all of the descriptors listed below there. Those are just some example ones. You're welcome to delete the ones you're not interested in and or add some new ones.
guess I wasn't really thinking about appearance that much.
Fair enough.
But I can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking Eloise, she doesn't, if you actually look at her directly, she doesn't have any features you would say, oh, this looks like a seal. But like if you look at her out of the corner of your eye, she doesn't look human.
I can see that. That makes sense. Any other questions before we get started? All right. It's a bit early, but I think I might, call for a 5-minute bio break, get a drink of water or whatever, and then we can come back and get started. See you all in a bit. Okay. Orla, as the selkie, would you like to begin the scene? Leah?
In mind, might whatever you said, repeat it.
Oh, I was saying, since you're playing the selkie, would you like to begin the scene?
Yes, I thought that might be it, but I just couldn't tell. All right. So I think it's a gray day. It's not raining yet, but as usual in this small fishing town, it always could. And Orla is, putting away some of the food, that people brought over, from the funeral, leaving out, 2 plates for snacks for her children. And she goes into, the main room of the house and pulls out a piece of knitting. You can see it's a sweater with kind of knitting that's more complicated than her own kind of moth-eaten sweater. And she's just a row or 2 from the end and casting off. And she picks it up and works on doing those last few rows.
Sounds good. Who wants to come in first?
Seems to me that my character should sort of be an interruption to things already in place to mix things up, so I was going to wait.
Eloise? Helene?
Pardon me, I was about to talk and then had to cough. All right. Helen enters, and I am pushing. I say the headstone's been delivered.
Oh, that's good. That's almost everything settled then, and you can arrange to have it brought out to the grave, can't you?
Oh, of course, of course. And I'm kind of lingering in the it's like I turn to exit and then like kind of like partly turn back and just like kind of there's a moment of hanging uncertainty in whether I plan on exiting.
Yeah, and I think Orla notices and says, oh, and I've laid out some food in the kitchen, so I don't want it to go to waste. You eat up. Looks like it'll be a difficult winter, so.
Yes, I'll this is fine. This is fine. And I like cross the room, grab the plate, and say I'll be in the study.
Yeah, and I think when you indicate the study, which belonged primarily to the captor in life, the Orla kind of like glances towards it. You see kind of passing over her face, like the remembering that it is empty, and she kind of looks at you, and I want to know, how have you hurt me before? As you stand heading into the captor's room.
I have traditionally taken the captor's side. I'm presuming that like at least that most of this was secret, that it wasn't necessarily like open. Oh, hi Shannon. That was a weird view. So no, that like this was, the dynamic was something that Hélène interpreted some other way. Didn't know that there was this other dynamic going on, and so she has occasionally treated you cruelly because you you seemed to Hélène to not be complying with perfectly reasonable requests.
Yeah, that sounds true. As I think as you're going in, Orla says, not everything in there needs to be dealt with immediately, Hélène. You don't have to take on those responsibilities right now. Some of the business will sort itself out in time. The people in the village know us.
There's so much more to do. Father's death didn't just create new business; it left old business neglected.
And Orla kind of gives like a very small snort at that like mention of old business that father intended to neglect, and then like straightens out her hands off the knitting needles for a second, like picks them up again and starts knitting.
I think Eloise arrives home at this point. She's wearing a freshly purchased black morning dress, and she's carrying two bundles in her arms, morning clothes for both Hélène and Orla.
Oh, thank you, Eloise. And you were able to tell the village seamstress that we'll be able to pay over the next month.
Yes, she said not to worry about payment. She said she knew we must have other things to worry about at the moment, and besides, everyone knows how well off a father was. At least how well off he seemed to be.
All the more reason that we should be paying our debts as we go. This is not the time to cast ourselves as charity cases in this town.
Orla kind of turns over her bundle and goes, still such an expense for something that will be worn for such a short time. It's impractical.
All the more expense later when our standing here is worth little to nothing.
And the question is, how long our money will last, Helen? We have money now, but Father was the only one earning. And with him gone, unless we marry soon, the money will not last.
This is why I have to put these emotional concerns aside and assess what's truly going on. Father kept a lot of secrets, and they need to be dug up and examined. And Hélène looks kind of, just for a moment, kind of glances over at Orla as she says this.
Yeah, Orla says, well, those secrets may be better off buried and forgotten. When each of you marries, you will create a new house, free of your father or my authority, and it might be best to leave things in this house where they can stay. But do you really wish to carry all of this with you into a new life?
It's not a choice. We take what we're given, and we deal with the consequences, however dire.
Orla looks to Eloise and says, well, what do you wish to do now? You're right that we can't stay here, any of us. But we were both good girls. Surely some young man has caught your eye or you his, and well, what do you wish now? And I am asking also, what do you want from me?
Eloise looks troubled. Oh, well, Hélène was always the popular one. I'm sure. I'm sure she'll soon have offers. I don't hold out much hope for my chances, and I just want to stay here with you, Mother, as long as I may. And my question for you is why don't I belong? Why am I not the one who will get offers?
Yeah, I think Orla kind of puts down her knitting at that moment and says, you needn't be so dramatic. Your sister, however popular, cannot move through this town as your father did. Men cannot all be swept into a chest like coins and kept for one person. If you feel so defensive about it, once your sister marries, none of the other boys, will be able to marry her again. And she feels like you keep seeing the world. She believes this anyway, like through comparison with your sister, and there's never enough room for two people trying to be one person.
You can keep all of them as far as I'm concerned. And Hélène kind of like drops the plate back on the counter and runs from the room.
She is so selfish. She knows none of the boys will give me a second look as long as she's still available. Why won't you just choose one of them?
Well, it's a luxury to choose among many suitors, and it can be simpler to choose from just one, but perhaps less enjoyable. If you were free to choose, Eloise, which would you choose?
I don't know. I would choose the one who chose me before Helen, but there is no boy like that.
Or the most like a human put upon mother that we've seen so far in this scene, and just says, kind of with the air of someone who has like taken a long time to learn this lesson, like, but wants to convey it as firmly as possible. Like, men are not all the same. It is not possible that all the boys your age love Elen best, for neither by their best nor their worst can they all be known. If you watch them all watch Elen and not how they look and speak to you, of course you will only see her reflected in their eyes. But the baker's son is a practical young man and works with things that must be handled gently, and seems that when I walk along the seashore in the evening, I've heard him sing, which I guess he does in secret. But perhaps the boy in the village for you is a boy who keeps his kindness secret, and you must find it.
And I think, and Eloise, she looks at the window, and I do not want to move into town, Mother. I enjoy living by the shore and walking down to the ocean each day. I I am as much a creature of the sea as of the land. And I don't think there is anyone in this village besides you who ever truly understands that. I don't think there is any boy who lives in both worlds as we do. I have seen you looking at the ocean, Mother, the same way I do.
And at that, Orla kind of sighs, and you can see that she's now, just a few stitches from the end of her sweater, but she puts her needles down again and says, well, perhaps if you wish the sea and not the young men of the village, you may still wish to leave here, Eloise, she says softly, but perhaps you should change your shape, cut your hair, and go to a different village and apprentice a fisherman rather than marry one. If you travel far enough, no one will know who or what you are, and you could have the sea if you want to, but you're right, you will not have it here.
I think Eloise looks pensive, and then she says, "Mother, there is something I need to show you." And she leads you down to the cellar, and like she pushes aside a big box of onions, and then pries up a stone beneath the onions, and there's a hollow under the stone which contains a sealskin.
Yeah, Orla, like the moment she catches a glimpse of a corner of it, kind of pushes aside more of the onions, which go tumbling down across the cellar floor, and picks it up, holds it to her face, and takes kind of a big inhale of it, and Eloise can kind of smell sea salt just like rolling off of it, right? It's as though there's a breeze in the middle of a basement. And Orla just like picks it up and kind of seems like she's lost her sense that you're in the room at all.
Eloise says, "Father always came down here when you were in town in market. I knew there was something here that he treasured, or that troubled him, or both. And so I searched the cellar one day until I found it, and I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, when you speak, Orla's looking at you now, and her eyes look, like a storm-tossed sea, and she's looking at you in a kind of intense and maybe angry way, and goes, "How long ago did you find this?"
It was after my birthday 3 years ago now. It was Father's secret.
It became yours when you found it and did not tell me. Why did you hide this from me?
But it was Father's secret to tell, wasn't it? What? I don't understand. What does this mean?
She kind of like, holds the sealskin almost, as though wrapping around her shoulders, but not quite allowing it to touch yet, and goes, "This is mine, as surely as you are mine, or Elen is mine, but mine first, mine before you all. And nothing that is so much me could be someone else's to keep, not your father's, not yours. What if I were to keep your eyes in a chest and call them my secret?"
Helen, have you been listening in on this, or?
Yeah. I will. Yeah, from kind of the top of the stair. I say, I never would have imagined, Eloise, that you would be complicit while I would be condemning the actions of the man who raised us. I only found out what he had done as he passed, begging for absolution that I could not offer and that he did not deserve.
What did he ask, Elen? What did he say to you that he would not say to me?
He wanted me to forgive him for what he did to you.
And, Orla kind of narrows her eyes and considers you now for a moment, Elen, and goes, "And did you?"
Of course not. Of course not. I have only now realized that my entire image of this man was based on lies and falsehoods and secrets, and that marriage only offers me a choice of the color of the chains with which I am bound.
And Orla kind of like takes us in surprised, and then says like, "So, you know him now. Who is it you know me to be? And I want to know, what do you want of me?"
I would only have you remain here. There's a place in a village like this for a widow and her daughter who remains unwed to care for her. But if you leave, I have no choice.
Yeah, I think Orla, when you say to care for her, she kind of looks at you both like, and it's hard to tell kind of what emotions are passing over her. And she goes like, do you know what it is to care for me? Follow me. And she just, walks out of the house holding the sealskin, heading towards the breakers of the ocean, heading towards the beach. Do you guys follow?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think now would be a good time for another selkie to come out of the ocean, if you like.
That's what I was thinking. Yes, I think as we get to the beach, at this point, I said it looked like it might rain, and it's still not quite raining here on the beach, but there's clearly a storm off the coast, right? And so, once I've brought you out here, I say, in what way, Helen, would you care for me? I have cared for you. And she kind of like pauses and says like, the root cellar is full of food and you will have plenty to eat. And you have your clothes to wear for the villagers to see you weep with your bodies, if not with your eyes. And you have each other, both of whom know how to care for each other. But what is it you would do for me? And she kind of gestures out to the sea like, would you give me this space to run through? Herring to catch in my teeth? What is it you would do?
I only know what I have been shown in my life, and the veil has been drawn, and I see a future before me that depends on a man, and I can't bear it. Would you claim your freedom at the expense of mine?
Orla kind of pauses at that, and then does say, your whole life to date, I have given up mine for. How much more of it do you require?
To perpetuate my taking part in a system that drives me into servitude to a man as surely as you have been is only to compound the crimes of my father. And only you can offer some degree, some measure, some way of breaking these chains.
Is it so bad? Is it so bad to have a husband, Helen? Would you condemn all of us to poverty to suit your selfish desires, your selfish desire for freedom at all costs?
It isn't a husband that I reject, but a master.
It's the same thing. That's the way of the world, Helen.
What was that you said, Pearl?
Oh, just that I thought that might be a good moment for someone to emerge from the sea, but now there's an interaction going on, so I don't want to interrupt. Unless you want me to interrupt.
No, feel free. I ended on a nice line.
So if you were
what does it look like when you come in?
I think you just see someone walking out of the water with a seal pelt sort of draped across them, but very much like being held close. And Orla, you would recognize Shannon, but Eloise and Helen probably would not.
Yeah, I think when I see you, I've carried my sealskin out and I hold it like close to my chest. Almost surprised to see the casual way you're carrying yours, not having had it stolen. And then like breathe out, Shannon, like How did you know to come for me?
Well, I've been looking for you for a long time, Orla. There are many shores along this side of the isle. One of them had to be where you ended up. It's been many years, but you look much the same to me.
Yeah, and I think Orla probably does have like streaks of white in her hair, and like when she hears this, she kind of runs her hands over her changed human features. Oh, kind of thinking it over, and goes to Shannon, and is the coral still out there in the depths beyond where a human can swim? What what is what has changed?
Not much other than your absence. The sea is, well, you know as well as any of us. The sea keeps its own counsel. It is not subject to the ever-changing ways of men. We tend to the kelp and the coral, and we swim with the fish and the dolphins, and we sing, and we've mourned your absence.
Yeah, I think Eloise and Helene, you who've grown up with Orla, you can see that there's like a softening to her eyes in a way that makes you realize there's always been something like harder or distant about them, even in kind of the quietest moments up till now.
See streaks of different colored hair and all of those nonsense, those aren't what matter. I still see the wild sea in your eyes, and as you relax, you look more and more like your old self. A
Yeah,
tempest in a woman.
Orla looks back at you two and says, you both are looking for a space without chains or masters, and if one of you found it and could go, but the other could not follow, would you make your sister stay with you in bondage rather than let her be free?
That is not a choice. I cannot do as you do and go beneath the sea. I am not your daughter in that way. I am cursed with a desire that I can never attain, and only now do I understand the nature of the curse. You have brought me to this, Mother. You have awakened, you have shown me a vision of what could be for some but can never be for me.
Orla, Helen, Orla turns to you and says, and you two agree you would rather have your sister remain chained if you could not enjoy her freedom too?
If you were to leave to pursue your own agenda and appetites, I would be just yesterday I was bereaved and shocked and made fatherless, and you would make an orphan of me, if not in truth, in effect. And to know that this that you would sell me into bondage, knowing what you know of what it is to suffer, is unimaginable, unfathomable.
Orla, you You have had children here on the land, and they do not have the sea in their blood.
She kind of casts a guilty look at Eloise and goes, not enough of it, perhaps, to breathe as we do, but enough to have the air of the land stick in their throats.
I cannot imagine such an existence. I'm going to walk up and put a hand on each of your faces, the two children, and say, I feel for you, younglings, but you must know that your mother she is of the sea. She is wild and untamable, and she deserves the freedom that was her birthright. And as she has cared for you these many years, you must see that she deserves the care from you to be who she is.
Is this not also my own birthright? Is this not also the duty of a parent to her child? I am not offering to chain or enslave my mother, but to try to forge a new relationship with this person that was only now known to be a stranger to me all these years. And that very nature, simply because I am not able to swim off into the sea and leave behind all worldly cares, does not mean that the same desire for freedom doesn't burn in my heart.
You speak of forging a new relationship and not putting her into bondage and whatnot, but all I have heard are accusations that she would sell you into bondage and this sort of thing, which I don't understand perhaps the ways of the land, but I cannot see Orla selling you into bondage the way you imply, and I don't see you reaching to her as a child would to a mother, but instead as someone who is aggrieved. And perhaps it is the lack of the sea that has turned you so bitter. What is it you hunger for?
I only wish to pursue my own nature, my own inclinations, my own destiny. And an orphaned woman with a sister to look after is nothing if not dependent on the goodwill of a man. And all I know of men now is what I learned at my father's bedside.
And you think that having a widowed mother will somehow change this fate that you so fear? What do you think she will do for you that you could not do for yourself?
It is not acceptable for a woman such as I to maintain ownership of an estate, of a position in a community. There would be enormous pressure for me to wed and to shackle myself to someone who I have no control over the manner in which I would be treated and the life that I would be allowed to lead. But the daughter of a widowed woman who chooses to remain a widow and to remain in the family home is a position of respect. It's a position of honor, even. And
I think Orla interrupts you. She's kind of like draped the sealskin, at least like over her head, a little like a hood, and there's something like a little elongated about her face, and her teeth look sharper than they have as a purely human woman. And she says, well, if it's widowhood you admire so much, simply take a husband, and then if you do not like him, take him out on a boat and I will take him for you, and you will have the freedom that you think you could get from me.
And Eloise is shocked. Mother, you cannot mean that.
What? You two have spoken as though all men are your father. All men are simply chains and obstacles. I can remove an obstacle a sufficiently stormy night like this one. Why is it you would defend them if you think there is nothing worthwhile in them?
It pleases me that your children have grown up with the wildness of the sea, even if they cannot swim in it. Would you really shackle your mother, seeing her true nature, to the role of a matronly widow for the rest of her life so that you might siphon off her honorable position? Why not strike out into the world? Who forces you to stay here and marry?
I do not wish her to give up the sea.
Walk?
I do not wish her to give up the sea. I simply wish her not to give up the land, to be part of both worlds, not
Well,
to
your sister-
abandon her children for the sake of her past.
Your sister doesn't seem to share that opinion.
Yeah, Orla looks at you, Ellen, and goes, you know, and if I did what your sister asked, you would still be on your own. You would still have to find a way in the world. That wasn't me. Is it me you want, or just the cover to continue living life as we have?
The wounds inflicted are still fresh. I have no way of knowing what it is that I want from you. You are a virtual stranger to me, as is my father. And I cannot speak to what conclusions I will draw, but isn't this true of all our relationships? Isn't this true that we must negotiate these? And this is a person who before me who I had only thought of as weak and sullen and resistant, and I it's all cast in a new light, and it takes more than a day or a week or a fortnight or a year to know this person who bore me.
And I think as you say that, Orla does throw the sealskin the rest of the way over herself and goes, well, it will take more time than I can spend dry shod for you to learn what it is you are asking of me. And she looks to you, Eloise, and goes, I did not finish your sweater. It was within a few stitches of being complete. Looks back and forth between the two of you and goes, unravel it, girls, and make it again in your own image, together. And by the time you have done that, I will return to finish the last stitches. But until you have, you must work on together alone. And and she looks at you, Eloise, like heavily and says, I do return. Perhaps you will know what it is you wish to ask of me. And with that, she turns and dives into the sea, knowing that Shannon will follow.
I absolutely will, but I have parting words for Helen. Oh, weak and spineless stranger, remain shackled to this land for me, for humanity's expectations with all their limitations. Give yourself up for my betterment because I am afraid to be myself. Is this how you speak to your mother? Is this how you speak to anyone? If she is such a stranger, what does she owe you?
You can no more understand the forces that act upon me and the choices that I am constrained to, then I can walk into the ocean free like you and my mother and breathe the water without drowning.
I would
And you
probably
ask
have more
me,
sympathy if you had not just spent that entire time that I've seen you so far speaking to your mother as though she were a pitiful, dishonorable, shriveled old woman when she is vibrant and vicious and beautiful.
I do
And I
not.
will join her in the sea because we swam and frolicked and created beautiful musical waves before you were born. And I know your mother in ways that you never will. But when she comes back, as she has stated she will, perhaps you will have gained some perspective from your sister, and I hope we shall meet with better conversations to be had. And I put my belt back on and dive into the sea after Orla.
Wait, first, Eloise, do you have anything to say before Shannon goes?
Oh, yeah, by all means.
Let's see. Farewell, mother. I will see you again.
You will see her. And in the meantime, do not let your sister define your destiny. You come from someone much too tempestuous to allow for such a thing. I look forward to seeing what you've become when again we resurface. And now I will dive into the sea.
All right. Thanks. Would people be interested in doing a sort of epilogue, like to, flash forward, see what the characters are doing later on?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
I'd
Feel free
love to see the girls first, I think.
Sounds good. Which would you, Helen, Eloise, which would you like to go first?
And I think it's like several months later, and Eloise has unraveled the sweater, and I think Helen hasn't been helping at all. But I've been remaking the sweater in the style the style of the traditional fisherman's sweater, and I've been gathering in secret male clothes. I've been preparing to cut my hair and disguise myself and go to sea, but not before I see my mother again.
Helen, yeah, I think that what we see is Helen preparing for her wedding. It is it's fairly bittersweet in its feeling. There's the you see like shots of the ceremony, of the celebration. She just has kind of a not quite blank, but she seems to only emote appropriately when she's directly interacting with people. And then you see a procession of revelers accompanying the bride and groom to the docks, where there is a brightly decorated boat that is to bear them to the lodgings for their wedding night. on a nearby island, and her husband, who barely you really haven't even gotten a good look at his face, takes up the oars, and you see her kind of staring out to sea as the boat rows out into a sky that is mostly clear with clouds on the horizon.
Then I think as the boat's going out across the sea, like you feel something knock against the bottom of it. Like a hand knocking on a door, and the boat kind of jostles, and your newly espoused husband looks surprised. And you see like a little seal face like pop out of the water and look at him and look at you and like tilt its head, being like, "Should I capsize the boat?"
And she looks and gives a nod.
Nice. I think like the boat just like straight over, and if you don't mind, maybe we see the husband reaching out to you and then like a strong like pull on his ankle. Do you do or say anything to him as he starts to get pulled under?
No. I kind of I have the wedding dress that I made had some stitches that were designed to tear away, and she removes the bits that would impede her movement in the water, and she kind of just like almost peacefully floats in the tossing waves.
Yeah, and I think that night, as whatever, is happening in the aftermath of whether it's been discovered yet your husband has drowned, we see Orla, walking out of the water as a human and, knocking on the door of where Eloise is and bringing her a pair of men's shoes, slightly waterlogged, for her costume. And each of them has a fish in it. Orla clearly, after being in the water, like expects praise from Eloise for bringing both shoes she might need and dinner.
Nice.
Shannon, do you want a last bid, or are you good?
I feel like I'm kind of good. Like maybe as that last scene was going on, you see a happy seal sort of diving in and out of the water in the background and like doing what the seal equivalent of laughing would be, floating on her back, just waiting for Orla to return.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Wasn't sure how long it would run, so it looks like we're going a bit early.
I mean,
If
it
you
seems
wouldn't,
like it could go much longer. It really just depends on
yeah. Well,
I guess, but
well, we can stop the recording and unpack it for a little bit if you want, or
if you don't mind, I'd prefer to get roses and thorns or stars and wishes, whatever you'd like, on the recording, just to keep a copy.
Yeah.
I can't type that fast.
No problem.
All right. That's the microphone, Kitty. Don't mind going in character keeper order. Let's start with Leah. Stars and wishes.
I think stars to Elen and Eloise for just like, establishing very different sisters and squabbling, to the point where it felt like I could, and I had to like always weigh how much to play you two off each other rather than what would be a better mother thing to do, which is like try and bring you together. But I felt like that was a really good dynamic you two were building up, especially for something that's a small number of characters. You help like the ground keep shifting between you. And big star to Pearl for just like coming out of the sea in the middle of all this human drama and being like, "What? I am the only reasonable person here," which like just felt really great as like, what will it be like to meet a seal who's been living more freely as a seal? And I thought you really hit that.
Oh yes, I wanted to take a second to say, yeah, Leah, you were a great selkie for this run. You brought big, big mom energy. Just like if your husband gives you trouble, I can drown him. It's yeah, really, I think great, contributions from everyone. Elian, yeah, I think, yeah, she was a good heir, kind of demanding in a way, but I can see it. And Eloise, you really nailed the sort of pathos of like, yeah, I can't go into the ocean. I'd really like to, but I can't. And yeah, and Shannon, yeah, the ocean's great. We have fish and no rules. Everything's awesome. Okay, next, Richard, yeah.
Yeah, well, what I really enjoyed is like working to. I mean, like essentially, like I love being involved in creating a situation where like everybody has a point. Like I feel like I don't feel like anybody came off as a villain in the situation, and I thought that was really I like that because that's what makes good drama. And so and having this kind of the way that the geometries of character kind of interlocked was really really great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you. Stephen?
Right. Well, I mean, stars to Richard because just for defining a character that forced me to immediately change my conception of what my character was going to be. It's like I had to sort of, okay, how can I make a character that's a good foil for this other character who is not going in the direction that I quite expected? And yeah, I mean, and stars to Leia for just really, it's like, oh, here's this, here is the secret of my father's that I know is significant. I don't exactly understand why, but I think it's time for you to know. And it's like, oh dear, it's just the realization that everything I understood about my parents was completely wrong. It was fun, just sort of just sort of rolling with it, and people were throwing things that I had to roll with, which was great. And the suggestion that, well, you could just dress up like a boy and become a sailor, which is what I eventually went with in the end. Yeah.
Great. Pearl?
Uh,
Oh, sorry, were you not done?
no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Stars to everyone. I mean, I was happy I came in when I did, but I also could have just watched. Like, it was very arresting and enjoyable from the beginning, and I almost didn't want to interrupt, so that's usually a good sign in terms of people creating something lovely. So I don't know, I thought it was really nice. Just everybody.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, for participating. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.